Welcome to Yelling into the Void, a podcast and discussing topics for World of Warcraft, this video game we all know and love. I'm Tevin. Uh, the one and only Mr. Plunderlord Scott is with me, as always.
Wait.
I have a question, Scott.
Uh-huh.
So Blizzard hired me, all right, to do a little bit of a external questionnaire, okay?
Okay.
So I need to ask you, what's your Severed Threads renowned at?
Ooh, I'll have to log into the game and check, so you're going to have to give me roughly 4 days to do that.
Ooh, dang, that's rough.
No, I did not exploit. I do not. There's no reason to do this at all. I didn't do it. So I think my renown's a 10, which is like the normal amount it should be at, probably.
For all of those unaware, there was an exploit around renowned for Severed Threads where you could like get the rep from multiple different characters rather than just the first time you did it on your warband.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Race to World First players did that. They got a 4-day ban because of that and are not able to play the game until Friday. So
Pretty huge. Pretty huge. Good to see. Good to see.
But I think bans, exploits, other nonsense aside, there are a few things that we should talk about today.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody's been keeping up, but we finally have content that isn't just heroics in the game now.
The season is here.
We have Mythic Zeros, we have max tier delves if you want to do them, raids, and the ability to get a Great Vault now, finally. That panel that you get where you see all your renowns and then the Great Vault on the left side is going to look a lot less empty, which is kind of nice. But I think all of that really does bring kind of like a fresh new breath of life to a game that, believe it or not, came out 3 weeks ago. And it just kind of felt wrong that I was already playing other games and like not no lifing WoW 3 weeks into a new expansion dropping. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a week ago today we were kind of getting sick of this whole thing already, and then 7 more days went by. I leveled like 2 healers to 80 last week. Am I going to play either of these healers? No. I just wanted to play the game really bad, and I was like, what do I do now? I guess I'll level these 2 healers. Yeah, it got pretty bad there. But yeah, as you said last week, it's all over now. When the season has started, it's all forgiven. We're going to forgive and forget and then complain about this again in 2 years when the next expansion comes out. But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, I'm not a fan of this release cadence, but you know, we lived it. We survived it.
I'm fine with like stopping and smelling to like take in the flowers and everything, but I don't need the flowers shoved in my face for an extra week, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think like I was thinking again about Dragonflight and how it didn't feel like this in Dragonflight, and I mean possibly it's the early access stuff, maybe, but ultimately I think really what it is the lack of M0s. And even though those were on a weekly unlock, still just having that thing there, like having you feel like you're progressing to the end of a progression path. And the heroic dungeons are just not it. They just are not it. And so those are out now though, and then we're not gonna be doing that many of them because delves are just 20 million times better for some reason. But they're here. We can do them if we want.
So I do have a couple of things that I feel like are very cool that we need to talk about this week.
Sure.
And so, all of this has happened. Delves are out, Mythic Zeros are out. We have a different Mythic Zero pool than we're used to having. The raids came out. The race has started. Earthen can level up in 3 hours by flying around. There's a lot of things to cover that have happened in the last week.
Sure.
So I do kind of want to start with the 20th anniversary of WoW. Before we get into that, though, we do have a couple of audience callouts, as we've been doing the last few weeks. And I think you'll like this first one. It's just hi from Stu B420 on our video where you just, ask somebody to say hi to you.
Stu, you're my boy, Stu. Thank you, Stu. I'll never forget you. Hey, weirdly saying Stu's name 3 times activated the Siri on my phone. That's weird. Stu, have you done?
Maybe Stu's hacked into your phone.
I think so.
They really want to say hi.
Hi, Stu. Thank you for following instructions. I really do. It's very important to me that you listen to that. I really do appreciate it.
The next one though is a throwback to last week, and it just made me chuckle. I actually responded to this comment saying that we love them, and it's I think their name is Max IB6XG. They said they identify with Jeff Krabappel, so I just had to throw that in there because I thought that that was a funny time. He went on to clarify that he might not be 45, but he's got enough kids running around that he hardly has time to do dungeons anymore. So
And to be clear, folks, I was kind of sort of talking about myself. I'm not 40 something, but I am 30 something, and I do have two children. And I was all day today while I was at work and then at home, sitting here knowing that everyone else is getting to try the new Delves and M Zeros while I wasn't able to get on the game today. So we're all a little bit of Jeff Krabappel, I think.
but well, I guess Scott,
Hmm.
the question I have, and this is circling all the way back around to the fact World of Warcraft as a game has been out for 20 years now.
Yeah,
The IP Warcraft has been out for longer than that.
30.
Yeah, I was about to say, I want to say an additional 10 years, but I didn't know if
Yep,
that was accurate or not.
it is. Yep.
So we've got a lot of not only lore, but games and friendships and relationships and everything else that have been built in this world that we all call home, this addiction that we all have and share.
I could quit
Uh,
anytime I want. Shut up.
so I guess the question that I have for you is if we went back and I'm getting this from a Willy video that I watched today. Um, if we went back all the way to vanilla and we look at every expansion leading up, do you think you have kind of like a positive thing about each expansion that you've played?
That I've played?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. Um, would you want me
I
to
guess
give one for each expansion?
you don't necessarily have to. That's what his video was, but that was like a 10-minute video on its own. So if we both did that, we're already
That's the
cutting
show.
into like
Yeah.
yeah. So I was just gonna say, like, in general, like there is the classic players, and obviously you and I have made ourselves known as like we are not part of the like classic crew as much as we are part of the retail crew. But I think it's a good question to ask. Like, do you think the game is ultimately better now and has improved on itself over the years, or do you think that it has gotten, like, obviously in some ways it might have gotten worse, but do you think overall it's gotten more grindy, less time respecting, stuff like that?
I think the game is better than it has ever been in the history of the game right this very second. Um, it is a different game. It is a game that has evolved over the course of these 20 years. You don't last as a game for 20 years if you don't change and adapt to the changing landscape of the environment that you're in. And video games in the past 20 years have changed with the way we interact with online games, the way we interact with RPGs, the way we interact with all these things has fundamentally shifted over the past 20 years. And while there are some people that really do like the old way, um, I think the game as a whole needed to grow beyond that. Do I sometimes nostalgically miss the exploring the wilds of Azeroth for the first time, and every around every corner is a danger, the world PvP, all like, do I miss all these things? Yeah, I do. But I also have gone back and played classic and said, no, I don't. I don't actually. I miss the idea of these things. I don't actually miss these things. And I think the game has continued to evolve and grow. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't agree with the direction, but that's the way it goes with these kind of things. I don't think you make it this far without doing something right, and it is pretty cool. We are at a moment right now, and I think Blizzard's got to be really patting themselves on the back right now because this, cadence of release notwithstanding, I think the reaction to this expansion has been phenomenal. Like,
Mhm.
people are loving this game, every bit of this game. Now there are complaints here and there that we all have, of course, but every part of the game people are really really into and really really loving, and you can see it. You can see the way people are reacting to it. You can see the excitement for it. And for this to coincide with the 20th anniversary of the game, I think they're just fucking ecstatic about all of
Yeah.
this right now. They've got to be so happy that like we pulled it off and people are responding, and it's great. And yeah, I obviously like I was in a different point in my life when I first started playing this game, and when I played it a lot when I was younger, and I don't want to go back to those times. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but like, man, I think it's a really good time to be a fan of this game. I think was it I forget the tweet, but I think it was like the owner of Warcraft Logs said that between retail and the popularity of the War Within, um, SOD, Cataclassic, and also WoW being back in China, and actually China is getting to play Wrath of the Lich King for like the first time right now. Um, just based on the amount of logs that are being submitted to Warcraft Logs, the owner of that site made the argument that there have never been more people playing World of Warcraft than there have right now, which is insane. And of course, let's put an asterisk on that we haven't like researched that opinion, and there's no actual quantifiable numbers to say whether that's true or not. But that's pretty remarkable.
Mhm.
That's pretty cool. And I think I love this game, and I think it's because of its uniqueness. No other game has been able to quite pull off what this game has. Other games have come close, like Final Fantasy 14 has been around for over 10 years now, right? They've been chugging for
Yep.
a while, and that game's doing very well. I think it had a little bump in the road. It had its Shadowlands, let's call it, in the latest expansion, but no, there's something special about this game, and yeah, I think it's never been better. So I'm pretty happy about everything. Like, we got a raid coming up, we got Mythic Plus coming up. I'm just in a really great place right now where I'm just really happy about all of it, and that's a great place to be.
Yeah. So I agree with you on literally every single point you had. The one thing that did stick out to me in the video that Willie did was the first thing he said, and it was about vanilla, and I was like, oh god, here we go. We're gonna get somebody who's more of a classic Andy saying something good about vanilla that I just like completely pointed three different things that annoy me about the game. But I know I definitely agreed with what he said. He said the reason that vanilla was so cool and so fun is you weren't starting a character that you've already built up and you have all your previous expansion best in slot gear. Like, you are literally starting as a nobody in a brand new world.
Yeah.
Y- You are tiny compared to everything that's being presented to you.
Hmm.
And it really made me wonder, like, that's what we experienced as new players back then. New players nowadays don't get that same like kind of grandiose entrance into the game. And I think that while the game is more kind of like alt friendly to people who have played it before and who know how to take the systems and abuse them and other things, uh it's maybe less new player friendly than potentially it ever has been before.
Yeah.
So that's my main concern. Like, how are we going to keep bringing people in? And you and I have actually talked about this before, but I'm not sure that that's a problem they can solve with evergreen systems that you want to build upon. They're only ever going to get more complex, and because of that, I think the new player ability to come in, understand everything, do everything correctly is just going to get worse and worse as time goes on.
Yeah, I think that's an inevitability, and to be honest with you, I don't know how much they care. um,
Mhm.
I think they have kind of acknowledged that that is just a fact of the game, and they could perhaps spend a lot of time and effort trying to get new people, trying to revamp the new player experience. I mean, they have the big selling point with the War Within in this regard was they've switched the new player experience to be Dragonflight, which like maps better to their modern updated vision of what the game is. But to your point, there's so many systems in this game. Like, all you have to do is like go to the WoW noob subreddit and like spend an hour there, and you see just like people are just like, what's a key? And there is really nothing in the game itself that explains and teaches these systems to you. Like, it's just not present. And I do think that's a problem, and I don't know exactly how to solve it in a way that doesn't completely bog down the experience. But I mean, I think if you asked Blizzard, I think and they gave you the honest answer, it would be, we're not really concerned with new players. Our goal is to bring back old players. And if you look at the marketing for the War Within, that it's on it right there. Like the tagline for the War Within in all the marketing I've seen is "Get back in the fight." What they are trying
Yeah.
to do is they are trying to signal to people that maybe quit this game during BFA or Shadowlands or Legion or whatever, that we have changed things, that we have shifted it, that we are moving back to the Warcraft that you will perhaps recognize, and it's time to come back. And that's I think their main draw is this idea that we've got a really solid base of retail players that are just probably going to be keeping play the game. They've done a really good job in Dragonflight at having a cadence of release that just makes you consistently feel like your sub has value, because between different game modes within retail itself, like just more frequent patches, but also things like Plunderstorm, also things like Remix. It's just I think the sub has never had this level of value, and so they're like, we've got those people now. Let's try to bring some people back, some people that went away. Let's bring them back and show them what we have for them. And I think the learning curve for those people will be also higher than you or me, but I think those people are much quicker to adapt to the game and its systems. New people, kids, young people, I don't know. I don't know how. I'm just trying to imagine, like, when this game came out. I was I'm gonna age myself here. I was it 2000? I guess it was 2004, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I was 19. Yeah, I was 19. Um, I can't imagine a 19-year-old, like, if I'm a 19-year-old gamer, like, just picking up World of Warcraft, just wow, no, like, um, there was 100 other different games you would play before this one, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they need those people. I think sure they would welcome as many people as they can get, because more subs is more money, and that's at the end of the day what the corporation wants. But no, I think their entire strategy is not based around bringing new people into the experience, but bringing people back to the experience.
Sure, sure. Well, I think that's really like my main concern with the fact that we are just continuing to
Yeah,
move forward with what we are doing. But I mean, all of that aside, right? Blizzard is planning to do more of like a grandiose kind of patch and event and everything else coming with the 20-year anniversary. I believe that's coming with patch 11.0.5,
yeah.
if I remember correctly.
Which I think some
Which
data mining said end of October ish.
Mhm.
So about 2 months from now, a little less than 2 months from now.
In that though, this is where things are a little bit weird with this giant patch. They announced a ton of class changes
They did.
and honestly, like, kind of pseudo reworks for classes that were already reworked recently.
Yeah.
And people are reading these and they're like trying to figure out whether things are still going to be meta, things are still going to be good, and everything else like that. And like none of these changes are on beta because people have been playing beta for the last 2 weeks, despite it just not being updated, which is just absolutely wild to me. It shows
Yeah.
you how the lack of content that we had. But anyways, all of this stuff is just on the PTR. And it's wild to me that we are getting told about class changes that are going to happen months before they happen, let alone before the raid even released.
Yeah.
Before people even got to like experience what their current class is, we're already being told about reworks that are going to be happening. And while I love the transparency, I think it's a good thing. It's not a situation we've ever been in before. And I don't know how to feel about it. Personally, like, it doesn't really impact the things that I'm playing. But for somebody like, I don't know, like Hunters, like BM is getting completely overhauled with the new changes that they're making to Dark Ranger.
Yeah.
And playing BM now versus knowing what you're going to be playing in 2 months is just, it feels bad. I,
Yeah,
I just
this
don't know
is
where to go.
no. I mean, this is it is really interesting. I was very surprised to see this news drop this week that not only was all this coming, but it has this number of class changes, and it's on the PTR now, right? That's the weird. It's like it's there right now. You can go play it on the PTR, and it's like, wait, we just started. Like things have just started. That's crazy. I honestly think when it comes to like some of the design changes in the classes, there was some Mistweaver changes, which by the way, Mistweavers now have like the Emperor from Star Wars Force Lightning, like the Crackling Jade Lightning got like super buffed, and it's actually going to be a button you press now, which is insane. It's really cool. Um, Honestly, what I think a lot of these class reworks, like the Paladin class tree, a lot of the Shaman stuff, the Dark Ranger stuff, it feels like to me this was a result of developers running out of time. It was a result of code lock. In order to make a expansion release date, they locked design at a certain point. They said, if we're going to make launch on this date, we need to lock design on this date, and then we iterate on balancing from after this date, and everything else that you wanted to do, that's going to go to the first patch. And so a lot of the stuff I think they had on their plate that they wanted to get done before the expansion released, and they just quite couldn't get there, and so they have to push it to the first patch afterwards, which yeah, I mean that does kind of feel like a bummer. You kind of wish that all the stuff had shipped with the game itself, but I think those changes will be here sooner rather than later. I think there is the weird thing that I saw though is there's some bug fixes in there,
Yeah.
and the question I have is like, okay, so I know these bug fixes are on the PTR now, but like you're not going to wait till October to push those bugs fixes live, right? Like one of them is I saw for totemic shamans, their healing rain, like they get the super totem, right? They get the super totem that casts healing rain. Well, that's a very mana intensive spell. It doesn't have a cast time, but it's very mana intensive. So you can use nature swiftness on it, which makes it free. But for whatever reason, when you do that, right now it just doesn't work. If you nature swiftness and hit that totem, it just doesn't work. Nothing happens. I think it still charges you the mana, and it might not even trigger the spell. It's just broken. Um, and they're fixing that. That's on the PTR patch notes to be fixed. Fix that now. Do that right now. Get that live. If it's fixed and it's working, get that live right now. So that's where I'm a little weird about it. I think ultimately, like, it does feel a little weird to announce. I don't mind them having to push some of these reworks until 11.05, because I do think like in 10.05, I think that was the first of maybe two ret reworks we got in Dragonflight, or was it 10.07? I don't know. The ret rework was very early in Dragonflight, so I don't mind them doing reworks in these patches. I think that's fine. But yeah, the timing of announcing the coming of the patch and announcing those reworks in the patch did feel a little weird, because yeah, it's like we haven't played, like I haven't played the class yet, like
Hmm.
on any kind of difficulty that above nothing. I haven't really played the class. Um but I think the 20th anniversary stuff looks pretty cool, Tevin. Like I'm pretty excited about this actually.
There's a lot of cosmetics that have been teased lately that I feel like just look awesome. And I
Yeah.
don't know, I think some of them aren't necessarily 20th anniversary. I think they're later like winter trading post
Yeah.
cosmetics,
Yeah.
but they look sick. Like there's a Sylvanas ensemble that
Mhm.
looks amazing.
I think that's going to be a trading post thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Um
But I
there's
mean the tier 2 remasters like all look great. Those look really cool. I mean the fact that we're essentially getting not really but sort of a raid tier, in that they're making BRD like a raid. That's pretty cool. Like I'm definitely going to do that. I'm definitely going
mhm.
to I don't know how many times I'll do that. I don't know if that's going to be a thing that will clear each week or anything, or just like a fun thing that we go into once and get some fun gear and be like, oh, that was a fun experience getting to relive this dungeon we all love, but in a raid group, and then we just move on. But even if that's the case, I'd be fine with that. Um,
How do you feel about all the drops in there being warbound? I feel like that's a really good call.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. And I think arguably, perhaps, maybe maybe all drops are just warbound until equipped. Maybe all of the item drops from now on are
uh
warbound until equipped. Maybe is that
I
too?
don't
Did I go
know.
too far with that? I don't know.
I don't know how I feel about that. The main reason I say that, and obviously I disagree with this reason for the most part, but like it feels really weird if you were able to like farm out a trinket on your main and you get the trinket on your main, but you need the same trinket on an alt. So you farm it out and you roll on that. And now you get that and you can trade it to your alt rather than somebody else getting it if you're in like a pug. Like I'm for the most part against the whole like, well, you should have to do stuff on that character to get gear on that character. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of past that point. Like, I feel like if you can play the class, you can play the class, and if you can't, you can't.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that make a very weird scenario there, where like, or here's another world where like nobody else needed it, but you can't need on it because you already own it, kind of thing, even if you want it for your warband. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a bunch of weird scenarios like that that I feel like they're probably just trying to avoid.
No, you're totally right, because in that system, like you the player would probably like, you get personal loot at the end of a key, right? You don't need it, but it's warbound until equipped. So like in the situation now, I might trade that to someone else in my group because it's between me and the garbage. But in a world of warbound until equipped everything, I'm just gonna take it and throw it into my warband bank just in case maybe one day I play a class that might need that piece of gear. And
Yep.
I don't know. It doesn't happen right now, but there's no harm in doing that. So yeah, that really slices out the whole kind of, um you might not always get the personal loot dice roll at the end of a dungeon, but sometimes you get lucky that the person who does happen to get it doesn't need it. And so I think chopping that out of the game ultimately hurts it more than helps it. So yeah, you've
Mhm.
won me over. I agree.
I
But for a limited time 20th anniversary event, I think it's the exact right decision.
So here's another thing that I've been noticing while I've been watching the race. People are getting BOE drops,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not like tradable BOEs. They're just warbound BOEs that you can only give to your warband.
Oh, so you think they've cut like BOEs out of the game now? Where they're just
I
not going to
think
have
there's
BOEs
both.
anymore?
I think there's both, but I don't know if they share like the same loot table
Interesting.
or if it's like a personal loot roll every time you loot a mob if you get one of these warbound things. That's what
I know the Warbound until equipped ones are personal loot table. Like are supposed to be. Like that's supposed to be personal loot table. You just get that. It's not like you can roll on it in the group or anything. That's just you loot the thing, you get it. Yeah, I haven't been paying enough attention to the loot they've been getting as I've kind of been watching the race out of the corner of my eye so far today to see about the BOE thing. That would be interesting if they kind of balanced it to where you will get more Warbound until equipped stuff, but as a consequence, you will get less BOE stuff, which would be a bummer for guilds like ours that fund a lot of what we do for selling off those BOEs. I would be a little bummed out. So I don't know. We'll see.
well, I was watching Max try to explain it, and he didn't even seem like he had a surefire grasp on like what was going on. So I'm not sure anybody really knows right now, but it
Hmm.
is something that I noticed, and it is something that I don't know. I just found a little bit interesting. I don't necessarily think that like that would make or break anything for me, and I don't
Hmm.
think that that's gonna like ruin the game or anything like
Sure.
that.
Sure.
But it was just something that was different that I noticed, and I don't know. I kind of like them experimenting with new things. I mean, if it doesn't work, they can always go back, right? Or at
Yeah.
least that should be the case. But I don't know. Aug's still here, so maybe not. um,
Ugh.
but yeah, all of the 20th anniversary stuff, I think is a pretty big step in the right direction. I think people are happy for the 20th anniversary. I think that they're really knocking it out of the park, and honestly, I like to see them do things like this. It takes development time away from whatever we're currently working on, sure, but it's nice to know that there's more to the game than just your everyday Mythic Plus runs.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a whole world that has happened in the last 20 years, and so celebrating that I think is a really cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing I was worried about, and the assumption that I had, is that this 20-year anniversary was going to be just like the pre-patch event, where it's going to be the same thing they always do, where it's like, oh, it's a big, randomly spawning world quest event that you all rush and kill the thing together, and then collect the tokens, and then turn in the tokens for the thing, the cosmetic stuff you want, and end of event, that's it. And so yeah, just the fact that it's not that, just the fact that it's they're taking an old dungeon and turning it into a raid, they're bringing back some bosses and might even be actually designing something. And then I think the other thing we didn't mention is they're adding classic time walking to the
Oh,
rotation. So now there will be 4 classic dungeons that you'll be able to do in the time walking weeks. That's pretty cool. I don't know. So I know Dead Mines is on the rotation. I, I guess it's going to be the kata version of Dead Mines.
yeah. I don't know if the old one exists
Yeah,
anymore.
I don't think it does. um, so which is fine. It's fine. But yeah, I mean, this seems a lot more thought out and fun and interesting than just your typical like, okay, this is a world event. Go over there, everyone kill the big boss, and then fly to the next area and kill the big boss. And I do think the game needs stuff like this. You know, I think a lot of times we get into a set formula in this is what an expansion's going to have. It's going to have a raid and dungeon. Like this is our set. This is how we do it every time, and you could like basically set your watch by it. And doing stuff that they've been doing recently, like surprising us with Plunder Storm, surprising us with Remix, doing this event as much bigger and more development. Like this is what keeps the game fresh and fun. That you just never you just never know what you're gonna get. I think is really important. Even though this is not the stuff that I true like. I am not going to say that my favorite part of the game is the BRD raid. Like I still like Mythic Plus way more. Um, but I think it's a mixture of all this stuff together. It's the systems that you really, really love mixed in with fun experiments on the side every so often.
yeah. So I think that as far as anything goes with the 20th anniversary, once we get closer to it and we get to experience it, we'll definitely have maybe more feelings about it. But
Yeah.
this is just from what we've been reading. And all in all, I think, I both kind of think this is a good thing. So
Yeah.
good job, Blizzard.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Well done. Well done. Yeah.
um, so the next thing is all the content that came out today.
Okay.
So
Disclaimer. I've not done any of it.
neither one of us have really done much of it.
You've done
So
a little bit more than me. A little bit.
unfortunately, everything came out around 1:30 Eastern. And we have jobs and everything like that.
Ugh,
So
I hate it.
uh I have been able to get through all the way up to tier 8 delves and get my bountiful delves done.
Hmm.
That's about the extent that I've done. Scott, I think you're done with you're maybe unlocked tier 8 delves now.
Yeah, basically all I had time to do so far today is hop on an alt and run through a 4, 5, 6, and 7 just to get to my 8s. And the reason I had to do it on an alt, we will explain to you shortly. But yeah, I've done that, and so I'm all kind of primed to get my 4 done. As soon as we get off this recording, I'm going to go get my 4 done on my main, and then go from there. So that's all I've done. And I've watched the race, so I've seen the raid. I have not stepped in there yet. Which actually, question for you: you didn't do LFR or anything yet?
I haven't done
Yeah.
LFR yet, but I have been watching the race.
So there's this weird thing with me actually, and I don't know if I'm the only person that does this. I don't like walking into the raid without my group. So like I like just emotionally and dramatically that the first time I walk into the raid and the first time I kill these bosses on any difficulty is with my raid group. So
Mhm.
I do not plan on stepping foot into the raid until Friday when we're going to be doing it as a guild. That's just a thing with me. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing it the other way, but like that's just for whatever reason, that's me. It's just like it feels a little weird for me to walk in and like we could hop on alts and do the raid on normal. Like we could pug a normal group before Friday if we wanted to. I would never do that because it just feels like I feel like the first time I kill these bosses, it should be with my boys.
Mhm.
And that's always kind of been me. But so yeah, I have no plans to walk into that raid till Friday.
I think there's a tier boss, so I'll
There is.
probably try to do it.
Yeah, I fully
Um,
admit that this is like from a min maxing perspective, I am giving up a potential at tier. But whatever.
yeah. No, I would normally agree with you, but unfortunately, my degenerate try hard self is not going to be able to tell me tell myself to not go in and try for the tier piece before our raid.
Yeah,
So
sure. To be clear, I am also a degenerate, and we will discover why as we move into this delve nonsense. But yeah, this is the one thing where I'm like, no, I really want to experience this for the first time with everyone.
but so I guess let's just get started with delves. So there are delves have opened up all the way to tier 12, right? I
11,
think that's
11.
right. So all the way up. Obviously gear I think caps at 8 always, right? Like it
Correct.
will
Yep.
never go higher than a tier 8 delve.
Correct.
And that's for both your vault and the end of dungeon, end of delve chests.
Yep.
So yes, I've gotten up to 8. I haven't gone past 8, but I've done 8s, and with 8s, you can also spend your relic coffer keys if you've been saving them to do the bountiful delves that you get, and you get one of or 4 of those each day. And you can go in there and you can loot the bountiful chest at the end, which gets you a 603 piece of gear that can be upgraded to I don't know, higher than that,
619, I think.
that's, yep, that sounds about right. Um, which is cool. It There's another weird thing about that we can talk about a little bit later. That it's that high, but it is what it is. Um, I guess the first thing that I want to talk about, and we talk like the overwhelming question that happened when I was sitting in Discord with our guild, and every time somebody came in and they asked, it's like, do I use a key when I go into the Bountiful Delve? What happens when I go into the Bountiful Delve? People are saying that you consume the key. People are saying you consume the delve. And it's just like, this seems all just like a little bit convoluted. So like
Yeah.
my thought process here is like, I don't understand why the delve. So the way that this works, let's just rewind. The way this works is you get these relic coffer keys. You get them from doing weekly stuff. You get like 4. You can get up to 4 caches a week. Each one will have a key in it, and then you can also get key fragments that all add up to be a key eventually. And so you get a key, and all that key does is unlocks a chest at the end of a delve, at the end of a bountiful delve, which are
Yeah.
the glowing delves on your map. Now, you can do a bountiful delve without spending the key.
Correct.
And if you do that and you complete it, that delve is gone whether you open the bountiful chest or not.
Yeah. It will
That is the part
eat the delve. Yeah. Yeah.
that is just so weird to me. I don't like that. I feel like the bountiful delve should stay until you open it.
I agree. Because
And
the point of making it a limited thing is you're only giving a certain amount of chances at the best top gear via delves a day, right? So that's the point. So if you're not executing on that method of getting the gear, there's no harm. There's because I don't. Well, okay. The two normal chests in the delve, none of the loot in there changes based on whether it's bountiful or not, right? The only thing that changes is that there's a third chest that you unlock with the coffer key. Yeah, no, they should change that. It shouldn't go away if you don't use the key. I agree. Because yeah, what was happening is there were people that were just like leveling up to get up to 8s, and they were like hopping into a bountiful delve not knowing that if I hopped into a 4 on this delve and it happened to be bountiful and I didn't use my key, of course, because I want to wait till it's an 8, and then you exit the delve and it's like, oh nope, you used that charge of bountiful. You used your bountiful charge today. Sorry, come back tomorrow. Yeah, that's not great. That's not great.
well, I had to explain this like 4 times in our guild Discord,
Well,
and it's just like it has no reason to be this convoluted.
yeah, I mean, to be clear, like and that, I think this is a common thing in WoW systems is like the convoluted nature comes if you are wanting to min max the system. Like if you don't care about that, none of this really matters, right?
Sure.
Like for the average player, doing a bountiful delve as a 6 and is like, oh, I'm going to save my key anyway, but I lost. I'll have to wait till tomorrow. That's not a big deal. I mean, that's not a big deal at all. But yeah, like I think one of the really interesting, like if you want to min max the systems, the steps that you need to do and the steps that you need not just to do it, but to find out how to do it are so confusing and weird. Because yeah, we haven't even talked about these maps, which is a thing I didn't even know existed until today. That is a whole new wrinkle on this whole thing. That's like it's just like there's like you have to go through like a 12-step process before you open your fucking chest and get your thing. And if you mess one step up, you've kind of hurt your player power slightly. And for most people that doesn't matter, but if you were wanting to try to get the maximum possible reward out of the system, you're like, ah, fuck. So yeah.
Well, I guess to add another layer on top of all of this, and then we'll dive into what you're talking about with the maps. So it was brought to our attention from a Wowhead article that if you want to min max delves, it is more beneficial for you to do them on an alt until you get up to an 8.
Yep.
The
Why is that,
reason
Tevin?
for that is they have a chance delves, and I don't, is it just delves that can drop these map pieces,
I
or is
believe
it
so, yeah.
anything? Okay. So delves have a chance to drop one item at the end of it that's a map, and I think you can get 3 of these maps a week.
Correct. Yep.
And we actually, in the group that I was doing it with, because I didn't read this article until I had already gotten to 8, or people had already gotten to 8. So I just went ahead and did it on my main, anyways, knowing that this was a potential, but it is what it is. Essentially, you lose out on those chances. So the map upgrades the next run of a delve to have like an additional loot chest at the
Yeah.
end that has the potential to have good gear in it.
But it
And
this is so
and
this is so
it's
fucked.
based on the level at which you got the map piece
Yeah.
at.
It's not based on the level of the delve you activate the map on. It's based on the level of delve that the map dropped in, and you cannot not loot the map, right? So
Yep.
like if for example I'm on my main and I'm doing a 5 in order to build up to an 8 and I get a map drop at the end, well that's one of my 3. Sorry, you're shit out of luck. You have a level 5 map. And that's exactly why, as Tevin's saying, that's why I leveled 4 through 7 on an alt, because now I can get on my main. On my main, I am going to do nothing but 8s now, and I still have all 3 map potential drops, like able to be gotten.
Well, I don't know how frequent these things drop, because when I did my 4 bountifuls in a party of 5.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a party of 5 to get up to 8s as well. So we did a total of, what is it, 7 delves, 8 delves, something like that. I think we
Mm-hmm.
did 8 because we had to do it 2 because we're not going to get into it, but somebody didn't unlock 3. Um, I'm sure you can guess who that
I
was.
can. It's so funny that I know exactly who this person is, like immediately. Oh my
uh,
god.
so that happened, and essentially we saw two two maps dropped.
Mm-hmm.
So we had 5 times 8 attempts to get one of these maps. I guess times 3 if you want to count the fact that we were looting 3 chests at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but of all of that, we got 2.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't seem like they drop that frequently, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I don't know how impactful they are. I don't know what you get at the end of that. Like I don't have one. I haven't used it. So
Yeah, and I guess the question becomes like, is it going to be worth like grinding delves until you've got your 3, right? So you do your 4 bountiful for the day, or you do your, like, let's say 15, 16, you've cashed in all your keys for the week, you're out of keys, you can't get any more keys, but you haven't got all 3 maps yet. Do you keep grinding 8s until you get your 3 maps? That sounds pretty miserable. I don't think I'll be doing that. So I think I'm gonna do my delves till I run out of keys. Make sure my vault is filled with all 8 completes, and I'm gonna call it good. If I get some maps, that'll be a nice little bonus piece of loot. But that is one thing I will not be min maxing. So we'll
Mhm.
see. We'll see.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's another just convoluted thing that was added into the Delve system that, again, I mean, maybe it was talked about beforehand, but to my knowledge, everybody I've talked to Had no clue that this was a thing until we were notified by Wowhead.
You want to
Coming
know
right.
another convoluted thing in the delve system? You might have
Yeah,
heard of this one.
sure.
So after level 3, all delves have you basically have a death counter in them. So you have a certain amount of deaths until you have failed the delve. Um, it goes the number of deaths you have decreases as the difficulty level of the delves go up. So if you have a bountiful delve and you die, if you complete the delve, even though because it doesn't kick you out after you hit the number of deaths, you just won't get the stuff at the end. You just don't get the loot. You can still complete the delve. If you do that, um, you don't get the bountiful chest, and you've eaten the bountiful delve for the day. So, word of advice for people: if you're struggling with these things and you've been dying a lot and you've used all your deaths, if you leave the delve and come back, it resets. The bountiful will still be there, and you can get another shot at it. But if you didn't know that, and you're just like, oh shoot, okay, I'm almost at the end. I'll just kill this thing real quick and then do it over again. No, you won't. Oops. Yeah.
Uh,
So that's another
there's
thing that the game
another.
doesn't really tell you about.
There is another funny interaction with revives. Have you done any delves with anybody?
No, it's just been me.
So your revive only ticks down when you release.
Okay.
If you get rezzed by somebody, you do not take one of your revives away.
Oh, they certainly will fix that, right?
So what we were doing is if we were about to wipe, I was soul stoning our healer so that they could come back alive and res us without taking our revives.
Almost certainly going to be fixed immediately.
So we only ran into one scenario where we even came close to running out, and this is because did you pick up the quest to kill the giant guy? There's like a giant crab dude that they want you to kill.
Oh, that's like the 13th delve, right? That's the big bad guy, right?
I don't know if it's the 13th delve, but he just randomly showed up in one of our
Oh yeah,
delves
that's the only
while we
time I
were
died in
fighting.
doing my 4 to 7s is he fucking just showed up and killed
Yeah,
me. And then I ran back and his like claw was on the ground and it
yeah,
had
and
a
he runs
lot of
away.
shit in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is what happened to us, and that's why we almost used all of our lives. Is because like we were just like, oh shit. So I don't know if this is a random thing or what, but it was happening. It didn't happen all the way until we got to our final bountiful delve, and we were like almost done with it, and then this guy just pops up out of the ground and beats the shit out of us, and then runs away. So that was fun, but
Mhm.
I don't know, man. I don't, how are you feeling about delves? Doing it in a 5-man, like they kind of hit hard.
Yeah, I mean, so I like I said, I've only done the 4 to 7s. I did it solo on my warrior, protection warrior, and I will say, like, a 7 is like, my warrior's 580, and a 7 is beyond the recommended item level at that point. I think the recommended item level for like a 7 is like 590 something. So I was a little under it. I mean, I didn't die. I killed it, but I was definitely like having to pay attention to my rotation and like making sure that I'm doing all my protection warrior things. Like I'm keeping shield block and ignore pain up as much as possible. I definitely like really used victory rush to heal myself because warrior doesn't have that much self sustain. I should have picked a different tank to do this on. But I also didn't turn Bran into a healer. I could have turned Bran into a healer. I just left him as a DPS. So I really didn't have to try that hard. But I could definitely see a point where like I was getting to the point like fighting the last boss in the 7 where I was like, yeah, if I up this like once more, even as a tank, I think I'll be able to do it. But I think it's gonna probably start getting pretty hard. It seems like stuff's hitting pretty hard.
Oh yeah, I got hit by just one random mob that our tank didn't have on him. It hit me 3 times and killed me. It's a lot of damage.
Yeah, I don't know. This is supposed to be doable by people that aren't tanks, right? Like this is and granted, the recommended item level for 8s is like 603. So like we are doing these all at an item level 20-ish levels lower than we should. but it still just feels like if you are a DPS, especially a caster DPS, like this is going to be hard. Like it's going to be hard for you to solo these things. And the intent is in my mind supposed to be that they're soloable. So, I mean, I just feel like as a tank, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'll handle it. I'll be fine. It might be a little challenging for me, but I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, I mean, I think the idea of them as a soloable content feels like it might need some work.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I don't think this isn't delve related. I think we've kind of covered every point about delves. But I have been doing all of my weekly stuff on kind of multiple characters every week.
Hmm.
Uh and I did the Awakening the Machine, and like that was a joke. It was a pushover for my monk
Well,
and
they
my death
nerfed it.
knight and everything else. And then I went and I did it on my warlock. Last what? It was probably Saturday,
Hmm.
Friday maybe. And I went in there as Affliction, and I I fucking died. I
Hmm.
died at wave 18. I literally died in this thing that was a pushover bullshit like mechanic, and I'm not even under geared. Like I was still like 575 or something like that. And so like just the difference in the ability to have burst damage on demand versus not makes so many things just absolutely insanely different. And I think that burst damage is something that will become a very hot commodity when it comes to higher level delves. Like, kill the thing before it kills you will be the name of the game.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that they continue to do that. And this is, I think, when we talked about delves weeks ago, we were like, one of the biggest problems in this is that ultimately in this game, the way you do events and combat is you hit stuff until it dies. Like that is ultimately what you do. Um, you get hit by stuff and you hit it and you kill it before it kills you. And we just have so many different types of roles, and even within roles, like the ways that damage is absorbed and dished out. And it's like, if you do something like this where it's designed for solo content, it should be, to me, more mage towery than it is scenario-y, where it should be not only are we just changing numbers based on what role you are, but we're tailoring the experience to that role. That a tank experience in Mage Tower is completely different from a healer experience, completely different from a melee DPS experience, etc., etc., etc. Because they highlight the strengths and weaknesses of those roles and use that to test them specifically. And that is not what delves are. That is not what delves are. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just like, I just, uh, uh, I will be doing my weeklies that I need to do on delves in a group, because why would I not? Like it'll be faster and easier to do it with a group of people. And even if I can't do it with a group, if I have to do it by myself, there's no fucking way I'm doing it as a healer or like a caster DPS. There's just no fucking way. I'm going to do it as a tank, or I'm going to get a DPS that has a lot of self-sustain and is a little bit more beefy of a DPS, like a DK or something. And it's just like, of course you will. And it's like, I think it's gonna be really interesting, because there is that achievement for soloing the 13th delve, soloing that big boss. Like there's, you get um the cool transformation on your dirigible looking thing if you solo that. I don't know if the game's going to track. I'm thinking about like Palace of the Dead in Final Fantasy 14, where
Mhm.
like there was like a way to track specifically, like, yeah, you soloed Palace of the Dead, but did you do it on this job over like, I think it'd be cool if, like, not only is there, maybe this doesn't need to be a system built into the game because the people are just going to do it anyways, is like, yeah, you soloed that as a tank, but have you soloed it as a healer? Have you soloed it as a mage? That kind of thing, because I think that's
Mhm.
going to be just a completely different experience for sure.
Well, the thing that keeps coming into my head is like, uh Bran levels and does like an absolute massive amount of damage if you continue to level him up.
Hmm.
So I think that that'll help us out a lot too as we go higher and higher into these delves. If that is going to be content that you're going to continue to do, I would definitely focus on leveling your Bran.
Yeah, which
Uh,
that was news we learned today too, right? After level 15, Bran only gets experience in Bountiful Delves from
mhm.
15 on. Um, Didn't know that.
Uh,
That's new.
It seems like a lot though, because my brand went from, I don't know, probably just hitting 15 to like 21 now, 20, 21, something
Hmm.
like that. And we've only done 4. So, uh I guess you can kind of game the system too, maybe if you do bountiful delves on every character every week. I don't know how that's going to interact. But my question is like, if you go into Awakening the Machine, and so like, I guess if you go into a delve and you're playing Og, you can buff Bran and he'll do more damage. What do you do if you're an Og main in Awakening the Machine?
Just die. Like,
Just
I
don't do it?
just don't do it. Just don't do it. Like, yeah, just switch to devastation. I mean, that sucks. It shouldn't be that way, but I that's legitimately my answer. Is like, this is like so weird about this game sometimes. And like when Necrotic Wake is about to be a Mythic Plus dungeon, and they still like will allow Og to get picked for the part where you have to go down and kill the ad by yourself, right?
Mhm.
Um, now I think Og does a lot more damage themselves this expansion that they have in the past, but like still, man, like it's there are different things that happen in different interactions, and if we're going to do these solo things, it should be tailored. It should be tailored. You should not be handicapped because you play a certain class or a certain spec. Um, and the Awakening the Machine, you're right. It's like easy. It's like super super easy, unless and the fact that there is an unless there, I don't like.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the other kind of like major thing that is really weird about all of this is ultimately like it's hard now, but one, if this is content we continue to do as the expansion goes on, like Awakening the Machine will have to be updated or it's just going to be a joke.
I think it's just
Delve
gonna be a joke.
will probably have to get updated, which I'm assuming they are because there's this like delve track thing that's like a battle pass or trading post like track that you fill out throughout the season. So I'm assuming they'll get updated as seasons go on. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Again, delves aren't going to be Scouterize's main form of content probably, so we'll try to keep up with it as much as we can, but they're definitely interesting. I definitely think that they are more interesting than I was giving them credit for initially, and ultimately, I think that's a good thing. So,
I mean, as much as I've disparaged them over the course of this podcast, I do think like as the season starts to slow down, late season, I can definitely see myself wanting to be like, I want to solo this fucking 13th delve. I want to try to solo that and get that achievement and get that mount. Um, am I going to be doing this regularly? Like after this week, am I going to be doing delves? Probably not. Probably not for a while, because I would much rather be doing Mythic Plus, and as soon as that's available, I feel like that gear path is just better. Um,
yeah.
and it should be better. But so yeah, I think this week I'll knock out my 16 or whatever, and then maybe I'll do a little bit next week just to make sure I'm maximizing tier potential if I don't have tier by then. But yeah, outside of that, they're all right, but it's not my thing.
So the next thing I wanted to kind of talk through is our Mythic Zero pool, um, which it seems so stupid to talk about Mythic Zeros, but they're doing something different they've never done before. So I think it's worth talking about. The Mythic Zero pool is not just all of the dungeons from the War Within. It is the Mythic Season 1 dungeons,
Yep.
which I think is a good thing. It lets you get experience with them before you go in and do them on a 2, which is now a 12, and all of that stuff. So I ultimately think that one, that's the reason why, and two, it's a good thing. But it is different. It's different to know that our mythic pool is going to change next season as well,
Yeah.
because it's in theory going to be the season 2 dungeons, and then mythic of the season 1 dungeons will still award the old mythic stuff. So yeah, I mean they've never done it before, and I am interested to see what happens. But I think that ultimately, and I guess I kind of want to get your thoughts on this, but to me, it makes sense that they're doing this surely solely for the fact that they want people to do these dungeons before they go do them on a 12.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think part of the reason for this change in the system was to allow people to experience this stuff without the pressure of a timer. And so the idea that you get to walk into these seasonal dungeons um without the timer to like get to know them first, I think is really really great, and will hopefully get a lot more people to give the system a shot. So I do like that. Heroic too, by the way. The heroic, like, looking for heroic dungeons now will be the seasonal dungeons. Um, like, so I don't know if that means you just can't do the other four on heroic. I haven't logged into the game and checked yet. That, like, there's just no option. There might be option to like directly queue into it, but I don't know gear item level wise. Because another thing that happened today was the gear that drops in heroics now got bumped up a bit. I think it was 571 last week. It's now dropping 580 gear in the 8 seasonal heroics. So I don't think you can do like the brewery anymore, or the meadery, whatever. I just don't think you can do it anymore on heroic until next season, which is another big change. So it is different. It's interesting. I think I like it ultimately because I remember, like, first of all, I don't know if after first season, like, you or I are gonna do mythic zeros anymore anyway. Probably not. We'll probably just move right into mythic. The only way I could see us doing mythic zeros is if they do a delayed week start where we have zeros and not mythic plus. That's the only way
Yep.
I could see it happening. Um, but I do think, like, I remember talking with someone mid Dragonflight, like, the of like, okay, so with this new rotating dungeon thing, like, are there going to be zeros this week? Yes, but okay, which ones are they? Is it the seasonal ones, or is it just the base Dragonflight ones? And like, I didn't know the answer. And the answer is a little confusing because you tell someone like, okay, so you have these 8 that are your zeros, but once you move up to a 2, you lose 4 of those, but you gain 4 new ones. It's just a little convoluted, and it just it makes the system and the progression path at max level within the season so much more smooth. It's like, you have these 8 dungeons, and you'll either do them on heroic, you'll do them on mythic, or you'll do them on mythic plus. It's the same 8 dungeons, just ramping up in difficulty. That is cleaner, and I like
Mhm.
that. In a game that we've talked about already today has a lot of convoluted nonsense that is sometimes difficult to parse and understand, clean is good.
Yeah. The other thing with Mythic Zeros that I've been trying to pay attention to as much as I can is the damage, the difficulty. And talking with our guild, I specifically went and talked to them right before we recorded this because, like I said, I haven't been able to do any, and I noticed that they had a full 5-man doing them. Uh, they said that the difficulty, for the most part, is not too bad. You
Hmm.
have to know the mechanics of the dungeon, and then you're okay. That being said, Arakara City of Echoes
Uh-oh.
is an absolute shit show from everybody I have talked to. The group of 5 that I was talking to who were doing it, we have a tank that we were playing with. He said that one group that he had did it in 2 polls, but the group he was currently on a different character was on their like 4th or 5th poll. And then there's another guy in the guild I was talking to who did, 10 plus polls on it. But that final boss, man, it is just killing people. It is just killing people.
So which of the spider ones is City of Echoes? I can't keep this straight in my mind.
It's the leveling one. Well, it's the one with the webs and the holes in the webs,
Okay.
not the City of Threads where you have to go find the
Yeah.
hidden people.
Interesting. The final boss of that one, huh? Is
So
it
what's
is it a
killing
mechanical
people?
thing, or is it just a tuning thing?
It's the fact that the slimes have a lot of health.
Oh, okay.
So if you don't have burst damage and you're not able to kill your own slime before she does the like web AoE stuff, then you get in trouble. If you stack up, there's this green mechanic that shoots these like pools out that come off of players. So if you stack up for it, then you're gonna hit each other with these pools
Okay.
or these like I don't know what they are. They're like little ball things that like roll out from you. Um, so yeah, it seems difficult. There's going to be a way to solve it. It's going to be not a big deal, but that seems like the really big outlier right now. This is the
Okay.
one that everybody I've talked to has been complaining about, and it is the one that everybody that I've talked to has said is like potentially too hard.
Interesting. I thought I read somewhere that if you just CC those slimes, they despawn. Like you don't have to kill it if you can CC it, but
Really?
I don't know that for a fact.
If that's the case, then I think those guys are not going to be happy when I tell them that because I'm not kidding. They spent probably 45
I
minutes
mean,
trying
they
to kill
probably
the
tried that if they spent that long. Then I'm assuming they did. So
I
I
don't know. I
don't
caught the tail end of it.
know.
So we'll see what happens. And if you're in that group and you're listening to this tomorrow or whenever you listen to this, because you specifically asked me to talk about this boss, there you go. Just CC the mobs and you'll be fine.
It'd be so funny if that's the case. It'd be so funny.
So the other big thing that came out is the raid. And
Okay.
man, oh man, this raid looks pretty cool. like, okay, I've got to preface it with this. Like, before the raid came out, Scott had found this like pineapple game that he posted in our Discord, and that was super cool to like be this little pineapple with pineapple bosses, and you're like running around doing the actual raid mechanics, and it's explaining to you what to do for the fight with this game, rather than it just being like a Wowhead article that you're
Mhm.
reading or a video you're watching, and like doing that prior to the race and then watching them go through these like normal and heroic versions of these bosses in the race, like you can just put like two and two together so much easier. And it's cool, man. It's really cool. And one of the bosses that I feel like is getting not a lot of like hate, but from people that I've talked to say that they're concerned about it is one of the things that like it's one of the bosses that excites me the most. It looks awesome. It's the one the like blood guy where you have the four different platforms and you have to like get hit by the cone to go down into
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
other realm.
That's the second boss. The Bloodbound Horror. Yeah.
That boss looks sick to me. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is, but it just looks so fucking cool. Oh,
Yeah, the whole raid looks sweet to me. I like I said, I was only kind of half watching. The only time I like super paid attention to People's Prague was when they got to Ansarek, because that's a boss we hadn't seen at all. So I very intently watched the first normal kill of Ansarek for Liquid in their splits. And that boss looks fucking sick. It looks so cool. Like I love I was really worried because like when I was reading like the dungeon journal, it was like, oh, this seems like it has Dathia knockbacks. No, I hated Dathia, and it does. It does have that, but it doesn't seem like they're quite as annoying. Um, and maybe that'll change on the heroic version. We'll see. But it just seems like a very fun fight. It just seems like visually interesting. Lots of individual responsibilities and group decision making. Like the whole raid looks sweet. I'm very excited about the raid, but that final boss fight I think looks especially awesome. It's like they're doing this thing that they've always kind of done, and all the games of this type do, where they're like building a boss and they've come up with these other cool mechanics on previous bosses, and it's like, how can we find a way to like remix this in this boss? So they take the portal transfer thing from what was that boss in Shadowlands that used like the
oh,
you
Zymox.
yeah, the Zymox, like put the two portals down. Like that's in the Queen Ansarek fight. And like that's sweet. I loved that mechanic. That was so cool. And they've found a way to put it in there. And um it's so funny because there's a mechanic in one of the bosses. I think it's the Silken Court, where it does like basically it's like the Shiva circles from Final Fantasy 14. And I've like
Hmm.
listened to WoW players trying to explain to other WoW players how this works, and it's so funny because like this is it's a boss mechanic that 14 does all the time, all
Don't
the
it?
time. And it's like it's been fun listening to them. Like, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna see where the first one goes down, and then you're gonna get right next to it, and then the second it goes off, you're gonna move into it. And it's like, yeah, duh. Like I just think if you play Final Fantasy 14, I don't even think you have to explain that to anyone. You recognize it the second you see it. They all drop down in an order. You watch what the order is, and you move into the first one that blows off. This is the Titan bombs from like the very first fight in Final Fantasy. So it's just like a lot of really inventive mechanics. And remixes of mechanics that we know. I like the aesthetic of it a whole lot. I like the storyline of it. I did watch. So I said I want to go in and kill the bosses with my team the first time, and that was true. But I can't help but watch the cinematics the second they're out on YouTube. So I did watch the final cinematic of the raid. That seemed pretty sweet too. So yeah, it's all good, man. I love this. It's great.
The when you were talking about the Silken Court, I thought you were talking about the intermission that one of the bosses had, where it's like the donuts, but you were actually talking about the legitimate like the pie slices,
Yeah, the pie slices.
the
Yeah, yeah.
Shiva
There
circle.
are the donuts too, and the Silken Cord has that awesome thing where like two people have to get webbed together, and then they have to spread that web out over a line because the boss is going to charge. Like that's so cool. Like that's going to be a disaster in pugs. Like people are going to fuck that up like crazy. But that's awesome. That's awesome.
Scott, are you gonna like a council fight?
I mean, does it count as a council when it's only two? That's
Yeah,
like the lamest council I've ever seen. If it's
the
two,
Silken Court,
that's a court.
Silken Council.
Nope. If they wanted to call it the Silken Council, they would have had to have at least three of them in there. So, the Silken Duo.
I like that for that boss. I think for the most part you can cleave, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that essentially they share health, so it's double damage,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
That's really cool. That's a cool thing. I like bosses like that.
There's so many cool mechanics in that fight. There's also the thing where you get like each individual person will get a dot on them, and when you dispel the dot, it will jump to the nearest player, but it also jumps to the boss. And the mechanic is actually the boss is channeling a spell that if they finish the channel will wipe you, and you have to get 3 of these dispels on the boss, and it will interrupt the channel. So that's really cool too. Like there's plenty of ways to like min max that too, where you have them all like form a triangle around the boss, and then because it also deals damage to people around you, so like you don't want them all to just stack up on each other and dispel. You have to kind of be more controlled with it, and so you do a mass dispel with the priest by forming a triangle, and just each one of them is closer to the boss than they are to each other. It's really cool. It's like I'm into this raid for sure. I think this is gonna be great.
So you've been gushing about a lot of mechanics, and I hate to break it to you, but literally every mechanic you have brought up, uh, at least the last three, have all been the Silken Court. That dispel, the
Yeah,
tripping, and the Shiva circles, and the donut, like all of that is
it's a
Silken
cool
Court.
fight. It's a
That
cool
fight
fight.
looks amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great, and it's the penultimate fight too, right? Yeah, I think it is, and it
What's
looks.
the princess
I
whatever?
think
Isn't
that
that
one's before.
okay?
So there's actually like the the path in this raid is pretty fixed. I think there's only one point in the raid where you can like choose between. I think the fifth and the sixth boss technically can be done in either order. So you can either do like the brood twister slug looking thing, or you can do the Nexus princess. Um,
Okay.
so you can do those two in any order. But basically, besides that, everything everything goes in a pretty set order.
Man, that slug boss looks really cool too. Gahoon's brother, Gahoon's
Yeah.
little cousin.
Well,
Man,
and it's
that's
like taking
fun.
the egg breaking thing from Broodkeeper, but like
Yep.
doing it in a way that's not obnoxious and weird, and seems
And
much
you can
more.
kill the boss before they're all dead.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I'm excited. Um,
uh, so I I mean, I don't know. I want to experience the raid before we talk about it more in depth, because like there could be something that we're not seeing that's annoying, or there could be something that's just way more epic than we're talking about right now.
yeah.
So I don't want to get too in depth in this about this yet, because we don't raid until Friday. So I kind of want to put this on hold. Um, and one thing that I did want to talk a little bit about and we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I do think it's worth noting that the new racial for Earthen is a 200% increase to your exploration XP, and people have been literally like planning out paths on how to level up by just flying, which is absolutely bonkers. And one of the things that just makes me love this community even more because like it's so crazy and ridiculous that I love it. It's like the
Yeah.
guy who double agent who levels by just picking herbs and mining in the Pandaren starting area every single expansion. Like it's just it's just comical and I I love it so much.
Yeah, I wonder if they're gonna nerf it. I hope they don't. I hope they don't. But like, basically, there's a whole lot of like system interactions here that I didn't realize. Obviously, as you said, like the Earth and getting double experience for all this stuff. I didn't know that the amount of experience you get for exploring a new area was increased if you are lower level than the area you should be. So like if an area is red to you, you get more experience than if it was your same level. I didn't know that. I think that's interesting. I don't really understand the reasoning for that. Maybe it made sense in a world where like you got more experience in that zone because it was more dangerous to traverse that zone. But now when you have dragon riding at level 10, like that's gone. You just fly through it all and there's no real risk there. So but I don't want them to take it away because I just think this is hilarious. I just think it's hilarious to just fly around the world. And you don't even need every zone too. Like you get 70 well before you've discovered every spot in every zone. Um, I love this community. These people are so weird. I love it so much.
uh, well, I think the last thing we haven't talked about a ton, I mean, we've brought it up a bunch, is the race.
Hmm.
And obviously, we brought it up at the very start of the podcast that there have been Race to World First members who have been banned for 4 days. So they'll be back on Friday, which means they are currently not participating in the splits that are happening. And I think that ultimately it's not really going to do anything. I think it's just going to cause those people and the guilds as a whole, because the guilds are going to have to put on the splits, but it's just going to cause more work for the guilds.
Yeah.
Um, it's good to set an example of them. Obviously, like it shouldn't be exploit early, exploit often. It should be don't exploit. So I think it's a good thing that they're making an example of them. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. The race I think is in a pretty good spot though. It seems like at least Liquid has been going forward with their splits and haven't really had any issues.
Yeah.
I haven't seen much of Echo yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think Heroic is maybe hitting a little bit harder than they anticipated. But I ultimately they'll be fine. You haven't seen Echo yet because it's not Wednesday yet. Echo can't even get into the raid yet.
I meant even before like the prep and stuff that Echo had
Sure.
done.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the greatest moment of this whole race will be Method releasing a statement that says, for the first time in a long time, we'll feel like we're more prepared and everyone else is playing catch up to us. And that statement dropped an hour before they were all banned. like just like it's not even their fault because I don't think it was their statement. It was just like an interview they did with someone. But the timing of that was incredible. I laughed so hard at that. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited for the race as always. I think this time next week we'll be recording right as the first day they're really getting into Mythic proper, and that's when the race will truly begin. It's always fun. It's always really exciting, and I'm anxious to see who wins this time around. I agree with you. The bans were needed and will not affect the race. Like I think they were in a really tough situation where they felt like they needed to act, but also like if you do what maybe you should do, like the race is just dead. Like if you ban these people for uh 30 days or whatever, it's over. It's just
Mhm.
over. And they don't want to do that. But they do need to do something. And I think I was listening to Max talk about this, and Max is pretty convinced that like this will end exploiting in the race to world first. Like no guild is going to risk this. That is like a guild that has like monetary value like caught up in this, that makes money off of the race, Echo, Liquid, Method to a certain extent, will just this will effectively t- make them stop. They will not
Yep.
exploit anymore, and that's good. That's good because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how brazen people were being with it, like they were doing it on stream. And it's because it's Blizzard's fault. It's because they allowed a posture of there will not be consequences for this action to foster in the game. And it's good that they have finally stepped up and done something. I will say, and I don't want to get into a whole thing, but their customer service, like I love this game. I think they're killing it in this game right now, but the customer service is absolutely shit. And the fact that there are people getting 7-day bans because they are listing trade skill stuff at a lower price than all the big trade skillers are doing, and so they're collectively getting together and banning people for inappropriate speech, even though it's not true, and it takes forever to appeal it. Like, that is fucked up. That is incredible, and that was a problem all throughout Dragonflight, and it's a problem here again in the War Within, that you get these trade skill. I think calling them cartels is really funny because this is like fake internet money, but they are. I mean, it's a group of trade skillers getting together to agree upon prices and set prices and strike out against other groups and people that are setting prices lower than theirs, and not falling in line. And that's fucking absurd. And I like, they need to do something about that. And the
Yeah.
fact that the customer service system is so automated that, like, you can appeal this ban as ridiculous and can't get a hold of a real person to actually look at it, that's broken. That's fucked up. And
Yeah.
it's tough for me to see stuff like that. Like, I saw posts on Reddit this week of people saying like, "Yep, got a 7-day ban because I thought it was ridiculous what people were charging for this thing, and I happened to get the recipe, and I said tip whatever you want, and then suddenly I was banned for 7 days." That's what the fuck? What the fuck?
The other thing that I think is interesting is the people who got the bans for exploiting got 4-day bans, which seems, you know, like whatever, but that's pretty significant because to compete in the AWC or the MDI or TGP, you have to have a clean account. You cannot have ever been banned for more than 14 days.
Oh, interesting.
So it is very significant that they're only getting like a slap on the wrist for this, because those people, I mean, like the biggest name I think that got banned because of this is probably Genji, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And obviously, like the Echo Raid team lost Genji and Zalia. They might not be as good as they currently are. So um yeah, I just think that Blizzard did this in a smart way, but a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to give him a little credit for that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Uh, the last couple things that I wanted to talk about here are not things that I had detailed out in the script, but they are things that are kind of relevant to class changes and stuff that are coming up. So there has been a lot of talking about, concerns about bugs and removal of like the burden of power double dipping interaction that mages had, and a couple of other things like that. And all I wanted to say, and this is more just kind of like a plea to anybody who's listening, is give things a little bit of time,
Mm-hmm.
try them out
Mm-hmm.
before you get your pitchforks out. Because I think overall, the burden of power change, while is something that the mage community just generally isn't a fan of, I think is playing out better than they were initially thinking it was going to. And the interactions that it's having are actually not as atrocious as people thought. So they're just trying to remove some of this like degenerate coding and things that are not as explicitly outlined. And this goes further because they're removing the double dipping again for another precision. They removed it and then added it back, and now they're removing it again. And the reason that they're doing that is because initially they said they didn't give enough time for people to kind of grasp that that was going to be removed. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. All of that aside, they removed burden of power double dipping right after, so it doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, we're kind of famous for like reading a change on a website and like losing our fucking minds about it. See, tank changes in me a month and a half ago. I think we all could use a reminder that let's not overreact. Let's get into the game and actually see how things feel and how how performance is doing and wait. Like I do think this company struggles with balance a lot, and it's because this game is insanely complicated and balance is very difficult. But I do think they do a very good job of collecting data and then making decisions based off of that data. And that is something that we always don't always get to see. And so it's very
Mhm.
easy for us to look at something anecdotally and say feels wrong, this feels underpowered, I feel weak, this feels clunky. But they have a lot more data than we have. So um,
Yeah.
yeah.
If there is a bug, what I would say is do your best to document it. Create a forum post, create a support ticket. Whatever you can do helps. Obviously, if you go on any class Discord, almost all of them have bug sheets.
Hmm.
Definitely make sure it's added there, because those will incrementally probably get submitted to Blizzard employees to get solved. But they are doing their best to address these things.
Hmm.
There was a bug with Warlock that they did in one of their most recent updates, and then they pushed a fix for it a couple of days later. So
Yeah.
just make sure you're keeping people in the loop, and don't be so quick to grab the pitchforks.
He- you told me about that one, and like everything that you described about it, like first they thought the thought was that it was a stealth nerf of warlocks, and like I listened to your description of it and it's like there's no way that has to be a bug. That has to be some an oops that they didn't mean to do. And thank goodness it was.
So, but all of that aside, I do just want to say that I think that if you are looking for something to do, you are running out of content, always look to your alts because a lot of things are in a really good state right now. And if you haven't ever played something, this might be a good time to try it out because
For sure.
it's new to everybody. So
Yeah.
definitely look to your alts if you are looking for something to do and you've run out of stuff to do on your main.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing for sure.
It brings me to our weekly question though. Um and this is kind of the flip side of what I was just saying, but like we just had all the way up to tier 11 delves come out, mythic zeros come out, the raid, LFR actually came out too. We didn't really talk about that, but the first wing of LFR, I mean, we touched on it a little bit. That's out too. Um and just all of this stuff has come out today. The season started today. So I'm assuming that means PvP stuff has also started today, but I don't
Hmm.
PvP, so don't know for sure. So don't come at me if that's false. Um, but is this enough content to hold you guys over for another week? I mean, we don't get our repeatable content, or I guess the best way to put it is we don't get our pinnacle content until a week from today of this recording. So on the 18th, well, I guess the 17th, uh, we get all of our pinnacle content.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is this enough to keep you guys held over?
I got plenty to do. I'm good. I'm good.
So, if you guys have an answer, please make sure to let us know in the YouTube comments or contact us over at yellinginthe void at gmail or yellingintthevoidwow at gmail.com. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, you know this already, but the YouTube is at yelling into the void wow, and Twitter is at into the void wow.
Yeah, and if you are not already subscribed to this podcast, we come on guys, get on board. You're listening, you've made it to the end. Get on board, hit that sub button. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found. And we talked about streaming, and we streamed a little bit, or Tevin did when the game launched, and then we quickly were like, there's nothing to do. There's no reason to stream. But guess what? That's over now. So we'll definitely be streaming our raid this Friday. I believe we'll be doing that over on YouTube. And we'll also, as Mythic Plus kicks off next week, we'll hopefully be streaming all season long. So if you want to hang out, chat, see what it's like when you're mediocre at the game, you can watch me play it.
Well, consider liking, subscribing, commenting. I already mentioned commenting on YouTube, but liking and subscribing these videos helps. And all of that gets us more exposure into new people, bringing them into this community to have our, you know, our voices heard and everybody collectively coming together to maybe put the pitchforks down a little bit. So please definitely make sure to like it if you like it and comment on these videos if you don't mind. The one thing that I would say to also keep in mind is while we are streaming, feel free to come in and chat there too. Um, I am planning to kind of pick up streaming as more and more and more and more content comes out. I would have done it today, but today was very busy. So that'll probably maybe start tomorrow, is the hope. So Wednesday, the 11th,
Cool.
and we'll go from there. But until next time, guys, we'll just be over here yelling into the void.